Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning's Zoom webinar presented by the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Moncton. The title of today's webinar is Working Safely from Home and Avoiding Scams. So if you guys have been reading the news, listening to the radio, there's a lot of scams that have been going on, more so even the past few weeks with everything that's been going on. My name is Mireille Thibault. I'm the Promotion and Events Coordinator at the Chamber of Commerce. Bonjour à tous, bienvenue au webinaire Zoom de ce matin présenté par la Chambre de commerce pour le Grand Moncton. Le titre du webinaire d'aujourd'hui est Travailler la maison en sécurité tout en évitant les escroqueries. Je m'appelle Mireille Thibault, je suis la coordinatrice de promotion et événements de la Chambre. So this morning, we're very pleased to have Scott Beck, president at Becktek, who will walk us through this brave new world we're suddenly facing. And before I do turn the virtual podium over to him, I just wanted to remind everyone that we will have a Q&A session at the very end. So you can pose your question at any time. The chat button is just below at the bottom of your screen. So just type your question and we will try to pose as many as possible to our expert. Also, please note that we are muting everybody's microphone except for the presenter. So thanks very much for agreeing to present today. For those who don't know who Scott is, Scott Beck is the CEO of the fast-growing cybersecurity and IT services firm Becktek. He's a two-time international best-selling author and award-winning speaker, including appearances at NASDAQ and Harvard Club of Boston. He is the co-star of the Amazon Prime documentary Cybercrime, and Scott is a frequent celebrity guest expert with appearances on NBC, ABC, Fox, and Global. So with that, I will turn the virtual podium over to Scott. There you go.
Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. You know, and with all that and $2, I can still get a Tim Hortons coffee. So that's great. And as we're practicing our social distancing in these interesting times, it has certainly created some new dynamics. And while we should always be focused on our cybersecurity, these times have created some real unique opportunities that the bad guys are taking advantage of. You know, there's so much fear and uncertainty, and our world is changing, and they're taking advantage of those emotions to create havoc, to go even further. I mean, we've seen ransomware attacks across the board up 4,000%. 4,000% in just a couple of weeks. Cybercrime is a business, and it's a very profitable business. And can you imagine your business dealing with COVID and likely, and I want to say as I start off, you essential business people, service companies, and staff that are having to go in the office, thank you so much. Our frontline workers, of course, we've got our hospital staff and firefighters and that kind of stuff, but suddenly our grocery store workers and our corner store workers and all that, thank you very much for your service. But getting back to the situation, can you imagine dealing with what we're dealing with now, and now your company's data has been ransomed and you can't even access your data anymore? And this is the kind of stuff that we've got to kind of worry about and deal with right now. So I'm going to share my screen out. We're just kind of going to go through some stuff that we're seeing and some tips of what we can be doing to try to deal with the situation. So as we've transitioned a lot of the workforce to working from home, it's brought some new dynamics to accessing data and being able to work. And at Christmas time, there was such a big rush that we saw with Ring cameras and other type of internet connected devices that have been put on your home networks. Now we've taken our home computers and are accessing our corporate data from them. So one of the tips I would say is all these devices that you've got on your home network came with a default password. These default passwords are known out on the internet. I can do a quick Google search and find default passwords for Ring or for other devices. So make sure that you've got those devices, you've changed the passwords on those. And most home networks start with wireless. So make sure that you've got a unique wireless password, and don't be passing that out to everyone. Now, if you're using an internet service provider Wi-Fi, they would have given you a unique password, which is good. I just wouldn't be spreading that information out too far. If you are using a store-bought, something from Staples or whatnot, router, change the default passwords. We've been seeing hacks of the past where people have been able to get in. Because the sad part is if you've bought a router, one of these routers yourself, and put it on your network, chances are you're not updating them very often. And as new security problems occur, you could end up and get caught. So there's the screen. I think I didn't have it shared. There we go. Secure your home wireless and your devices. So would be tip number one. And as Bart says, you shall use strong passwords. It's amazing that they just came out with a report of what the top passwords were for last year. And guess what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is still in the top 5. The word password as a password, still in the top 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 using a variation of that, still in the top 10, depending on the situations. I love you. Dragon was in there. Football. You need to be using something that's stronger than that. What we've been recommending now is to use a passphrase. Maybe something like I like to walk my dogs on the beach, or my 2 dogs on the beach, and use the first letters of your passphrase, and make sure there's a character and a number in there. And try to use different passwords for financials, for your email, because let's face it, with the dark web, and I don't want to get down that path too deep, but if someone gets one of your passwords and you're using it all over the place, they can then start doing what's called password stuffing, which is going, hey, so I just found scottbeck.ca email address. That means he's in Canada. I wonder what the banks are in Canada. Oh, they only have this many banks. Oh, there's the sites. Oh, well, I've got his email address and I've already got a password. Let's go see if he's got an account at these places. Let's go see if he's got an account at Amazon and go order things. So make sure you're using different passwords on these things as well to try to help protect you. And you say, Scott, how am I supposed to remember all these passwords? Maybe look at getting yourself a password manager. There's any of them out there. That way you only have to remember one main password to access all the rest of the stuff that's being managed inside these programs. And if a website will allow you to use 2-factor authentication, what is that? So you enter your username and your password, and then they'll send a code to your phone, or you have an authenticator app on your phone and you have to enter a code. So it's like a second step to get in the doorway. A lot of sites are offering this now for free. If it's available, take advantage of it, because the chances of a bad guy being able to get your password and also get the code from your phone, not as likely, and that will help protect you a little bit more. And it's even more important now where we're working from home, where a lot of people are working from home. I touched on this a bit earlier, especially in your home environment with your devices. Make sure you're getting your software updated. There's always new hacks and security features and security aspects that are found. The updates are released. 2 years ago, the virus WannaCry, it was a ransomware virus. It spread across something like 150 countries, 200,000 computers in like 4 hours. It was the fastest spreading computer virus we've ever seen. And it could have been stopped with updates. There had already been software updates that would have stopped that, but many people didn't have them installed. So take a look at your devices, see if there's updates, and make sure that we get those things updated as well. And what are we talking about? Yes, your router, I touched on that already. Your phones, depending if you're using Android or iOS or Apple, there's going to be updates on those. Your corporate computers, hopefully you've got an IT partner and they're already doing that for you. But if not, make sure you're running these updates and checking for them, and get all those fixes in place so that you kind of built your walls up a little bit around your castle to keep the hackers out. And a very unique situation that we're finding ourselves in is normally when you're at the office, you don't have to worry about kids. You don't have to worry about a lot of different things. There's new dynamics that we're facing in these situations. So you got to make sure that your family and anyone else that might be in the household with you knows that the work computer is for work. Don't be taking that work computer on and letting the kids play and go around the internet. The chances of running into a bad site, especially now, the risks are highly increased. So if you've got a work computer, keep it for work purposes, and use something else for play devices. You're going to want to keep those things separated because, again, you don't want to be the doorway into the corporate data should your computer fall victim. And really one of the biggest things that you're going to have to worry about is, guys like I can put a bunch of security on your computer, but you have to be the human firewall. And what do I mean by that? Well, the hackers have figured out that if they run into good security, the easiest way that they can get around that security is to trick the human into letting them in. That's why we see a phishing email is still the #1 way for the bad guys to get into a network, is by sending out these emails. And with these times that we're in, we're all kind of a little heightened state, emotional state. So it makes it a lot easier for the bad guys to be using it. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about social engineering. They use clever manipulation of our nature. Let's face it, most people want to be helpful. Most people want to respond and help people out. And they'll take advantage of that. And we're going to go through a bunch of different examples here. And I'm going to show you some real world live scenarios that we've been seeing playing out across Canada, across the world. I've been talking with IT peers around the world. And it's not unique to Canada. It's happening across the board because, again, cybercrime is a great return on investment for a business. It's if you start thinking of it as a business, albeit not a great business from emotional, moral point of view. I guess that's what I'm looking for. But these guys don't have to abide by any rules. We legitimate business people have got the Digital Privacy Act that we've got to worry about safeguarding our people's material. We have to report our taxes. There's all these rules and regulations that we have to run our businesses. The bad guys don't have any of those. They don't have to worry about moral codes. Matter of fact, they will tend to go after the weakest people in society. They'll try to pretend to be your boss when they're sending out an email. They'll try to pretend to be a position of power to get you to do actions. So it's very important that we take some steps to try to guard against that. So let's get specifically into our coronavirus scams that we are now seeing. I mean, it did not take very long before this started getting headlines that we started seeing new attacks specifically around a coronavirus. Some of them were emails that were coming out saying, for example, 14 new cases in Moncton. Anything they could do to stir up some emotions to get people to open that email and possibly click the link or open up the files, they've been doing. So yeah, we got to watch those kind of things. And we've got now more ways that they can send it to us. I'm going to be talking a lot about phishing. In my industry, we come up with some of the strangest and neatest terms. Phishing, of course, the email. Schmishing is where they're sending you text messages or SMS text messages. And now we've got vishing, which is voicemail and robocalls that they're doing. The chances of them calling the office with people working at home, depending on how you were set up, it may not be as successful for them, but they will certainly do robocalls, and they'll blast out to area codes, and they'll just do thousands of these robocalls to try to get through. So speaking of robocalls, should you get one, hang up on it. Don't be pressing any buttons. Back in the day, it used to be, this is the captain, press 2, you've won a free trip. Well, now they're changing these into stuff around vaccinations or free home test kits or things that people are worried about. Of course, the big discussion right now is federal funding and relief programs. And they're taking advantage of that, saying, press 1 to get your whatever program that they're trying to highlight. So if you get a robocall, just hang up. And does anyone remember ever getting a phone call from Microsoft saying that you had a problem with your computer and they wanted to remote in and take a look? Well, those are still going on. They're just kind of changing the flavor of it a bit. And as people have started moving to home work environments, we're seeing more and more of these robocalls. So make sure if you get one of those robocalls, as I've said, hang up on it. To purchase scams, what do I mean by this? Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit. Home testing kits. They're not available, all right? There's been nothing authorized by the government, the US government, the Canadian government, for a home testing kit. Yet, there are lots of websites, there's lots of emails showing up, and they're willing to sell it to you. They'll sell you this home testing kit, and what you're doing basically is then paying them to scam you. You're going to give them all your personal information, your credit card information, to purchase one of these non-existent kits, which they'll then take your information and either sell it on the dark web, or then try to, as I talked about earlier, password stuffing, or they'll take your credit card information and go start buying stuff. So please, if you see something about home test kits, move on. Don't even consider it until you see something from public health on their website offering something direct. Don't believe what you're seeing or what they're offering you. A big uptake lately in vaccinations. Hey, there's been this breakthrough and this great vaccination. Okay, so from what I've learned, and I am not a doctor nor have I played one on TV, but I've been trying to watch this carefully. There are a couple of vaccination trials, live human trials that have now started. But these are trials that have started. There is no vaccinations presently that are available for sale that's going to protect against COVID-19. So again, if you get an email saying to buy a vaccination, or you come across a website offering it, know that it's fake. And various products, from cleaning products to toilet paper to, well, let's face it, there was a lot of hoarding that was going on at the beginning of this with toilet paper and cleaning supplies, and people were opening up little Amazon stores and trying to sell at a very gouged pricing some of these products through Amazon. Now, Amazon has stepped up and they've been shutting those down, but that's forced people that have now got a whole bunch of inventory to start trying to figure out how to sell this stuff different ways. So kind of be watching for that, specifically, again, if they start talking about the home kits and stuff. But even if they got some miracle, I saw one that was talking about this new miracle cleaning thing that, we understand Purell and the alcohol-based stuff and what we've been being told by officials to be using for cleaning supplies. But some of these nefarious folks are coming up with some unique products that they want to sell you that's going to solve all the problems for you. And it's just not. They're just looking to get your information. They're looking to get your credit card. They're looking to get your mailing address. You know, when you give them your shipping information, hey, this is all great stuff that they can turn around and sell for $1 on the dark web. And the other things you got to understand with cyber criminals is it's kind of like, let's take the medical profession. We've all been looking at it. You know, you've got general practitioners, then you've got specialists that branch off into different areas. Well, it's kind of like that in the cyber criminal world. There'll be organizations that are really good at getting that initial information. They'll turn around, they'll sell that to other specialists that are good at password stuffing that I was talking about earlier. Usually there's not one criminal organization that's good from the front end to the back end of taking advantage of all the different thousands of different scams and ways that they can do this. So they're constantly sharing this information amongst themselves. So we just got to try to keep that stuff out of their hands to begin with, so it doesn't happen. Okay, folks, let's talk about social media for a second. It's been a cesspool of misinformation, of fake links, of bad spots. They'll redirect you to websites that are actually infection codes. And Sophos, one of the security companies, did a check on this, and it takes 0.5 seconds for your computer, from the time your computer lands on an infected website, for it to send a computer virus to your computer. It can be that quick. So when you see something that seems rather sensational, and before you hit that share, please, I'm asking you to do me a favor personally, fact check, okay? Make sure it's actually legitimate. A lot of this stuff isn't. Where do you find that legitimate information? Well, you know, the Public Health Agency of Canada, World Health Organization, Center for Disease Control. These would be 3 great spots to go back and kind of fact check to make sure what you're reading isn't part of some misinformation, isn't part of some cyber criminal activity to try to get this stuff to go viral. And I've been seeing a lot of quizzes on Facebook lately of hey, let's get to know each other a little better. And, what was your mother's maiden name? And what was the first school you went to? All these different things that seem innocent. But guess what, folks? That is information that most of us are using for protecting our accounts. So basically, you are putting online your personal information that people can then use to try to guess your security passwords. And I'll go one step further. If I was to create one of these quizzes and I share it and it happens to go viral, guess what happens every time somebody fills out one of those forms and they forward this and it responds? I get notified. So as this thing gets spread worldwide, look at all the information I can gather from one of these free quizzes. And multiple police departments across Canada have said, look, folks, do not respond to these quizzes because you're giving up your personal information. So that's my advice to you. It looks fun. Don't do it because you could be giving the bad guys exactly what they need to hack into your world and into your personal accounts, and it could just be very, very bad. Online shopping, I touched on a little bit earlier with the fake products, but now we're making sure that when you're buying stuff, that you're buying it from sellers that you know, reputable sellers. There's been a ton of these shops that are popping up online that are questionable at best, that are gathering your information, and you may or may not receive the product. So please be very, very careful when you're passing out your credit card, especially in this day and age. Use sites that you know and love, whether it's one of the big box stores or a local store. And I would suggest, being a local business, like many of you that are on this webinar, try to support local as much as you possibly can, so that we can lift one another up to get through the turbulent times that we're navigating through. So please be very, very careful of stores that you don't know, especially if they're outside of Canada. Make sure you know who you're buying from. All right, let's start getting into some of the meat and potatoes of what we're actually seeing. Text messages. A lot of different text messages now floating around. And I will tell you, the Canadian government will not send you a text message saying, hey, they've got $1,375.50 just waiting for you to click a link to go and collect. It's not happening. Who is doing this is hackers, because they're going to get you to click that link, take you to a website, possibly fill out information, which you're voluntarily going to give up. They're using that allure of money. And we're hearing about the different programs that are going to be available to us. So we know it's coming, but they're not going to send it to you by text message. Okay, you're going to have to go to the website. You're going to have to fill it out, a legitimate Government of Canada website, Province of New Brunswick website, to fill these things out. It's not going to be coming to you by text message. If you get one of these, just delete it. Do not click the link, delete it. Here's another look of a different one that came out. This one made sure to mention specifically COVID-19 and the Government of Canada. And interestingly, this one was trying to send you to an IP address, and me being a little bit geeky, that actually went to a Canadian IP, which, tells us that these hackers not necessarily are all overseas. We might think it is, but sadly, we've got some cyber criminals right here with us in our own country, and this one kind of ended up proving it. More stuff that we're seeing due to the corona. This message came out saying you were going to get free groceries, money for emergency groceries. Thanks, Janice. But if you ended up clicking on that, that would take you to a bad spot. Red Cross is not supplying every Canadian household with free face masks. It is not doing that. Fact check. Remember I talked about fact check? If you get one of these text messages and it makes you think, hey, that might be a good thing, go fact check before you click on any of these links. Please, please, please. So those are just a few of the examples that we've seen happening over the last just couple of weeks. I mean, it hasn't. This hasn't been going on long, but people are ramping up their operations, and by people I mean cyber criminals, to take advantage of it. So there's a couple of examples of some text messages, some emails. Make sure not to be clicking on links that you don't know. So as you can see on this one, again, they're trying to play on emotions. They're saying, hey, they've uploaded this file for some updates and measures. This one was supposedly coming from company management to update their staff about what was going on. And yes, you guessed it, you clicked that link and it was actually taking you to a website that you wouldn't want to end up being at. Would have been bad. Another one that came out saying, hey, how to protect. Again, just with a hyperlink on it, another example. And this one, we're starting to see more and more of this type of attack, saying that this coming from the Public Health Agency of Canada or from the CDC or the World Health Organization, people, or different government departments actually. We've actually seen some different government departments, air quotes, sending out these emails as people try to impersonate positions of power or people that we would trust, authoritative folks, to try to get us to click on these links. Now, the interesting one on this one, if you squint in really close, you're going to notice at the top it says it's from the Public Health Agency of Canada, but notice the email address beside it. They actually came from jerseywow.com. Now on your phone, it might have been harder to see that, but if you were checking this on your computer, always make sure to see who the from is really from, and then take a look at the link that they were trying to send you to down below. And I'm going to talk about some steps of how to look at this, but Public Health Agency of Canada is not going to be selling you to balamolds.com. All right, it's going to be going to a .gov website. We're seeing a lot of attachments. Now, this email came out and it said it was coming from who-pc.com. Of course, this was an obvious attempt to impersonate the World Health Organization and saying how about the coronavirus safety. And if you downloaded that baby and clicked on it, yep, bad guys on your system. And I was talking with Xavier before the webinar, and he was saying, well, what can actually happen should somebody get on your system? Well, they could, from the easy side, turn on your webcams. They could be turning on your microphones. They could be spying on you and gathering more information. It could be as simple as that. And when I say simple, that's scary enough as it is. But it could go further to, we had a case in the greater Moncton area not very long ago. Someone ended up with a keylogger on the computer on the system that they did banking on. They logged into the bank site, and guess what? The bad guys ended up getting the bank site. They got the username, they got the password. The bad guys got into the bank account. They changed the password on the banking site, blocking the legitimate person out. And then they started taking out $10,000 transfers. And this particular business here in our area ended up getting hit over $250,000, $250,000. I mean, this is not stuff to be sneezing at. So please, 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 this is why we're trying to raise awareness around this and why the bad guys are using the emotional state of these events against us, because it is so profitable. I can't say that enough. $250,000 is no laughing matter, and that company may or may not be able to survive that. And on the back of that, we went into this whole coronavirus situation. Here's another one that came through. This one was saying, hey, they found a treatment. So here's a quick remedy. And they're now saying it's coming from a doctor. This one was from a research hospital in Israel. Does anyone think there's actually a doctor with that name? And they said a Word document. Well, you go, hey, Scott, it's a Word document. It's a PDF. It's not really that bad. It's not a program. Well, no, but what they've figured out is that in all Word docs or Excel spreadsheets, there's things called macros. You may or may not have heard of them. These are little programs that will run, and they were designed for good things. Create formulas on an Excel spreadsheet, different little add-ins to add enhancements to the software. A lot of companies use them. Well, the bad guys are using these now too, to then run the virus infection in the background. Now, for our company, what we've been able to see across the client base is when you open these things up, they'll call out to the internet and then start downloading viruses in the background. Now, our security software shuts that down, but we get a chance to see this actually happening. So I'm seeing it more and more in the logs and reports that are coming across. So this is sadly, people are clicking on these. Agent report. So the bad guys can pretend to be the boss, the controller. This was one that was sent out. They were saying, hey, we need to get an agent report of all our accounts receivables. Say, hey, could you also give us the customer payable contact information as well? And just email that over to us. You know, we're not worried about the security aspect, apparently. Why would they be asking for accounts receivable? Well, in this case, they may not actually be targeting you specifically, but maybe you're involved. Maybe you're a bookkeeper with a whole bunch of different clients. Maybe you're a larger company. They're looking for the next set of victims. They're gathering that information. So if suddenly they get all these company names and the contact information, guess what? They can do very targeted phishing attacks against your clients. Yeah, sure, they might owe you some money, but do you really want to be sending hackers after them? No. If you get, well, maybe not, hopefully not. If you get something like this saying, hey, we have a wire transfer to be done, we need you to send client information, especially personal identifiable information. We want you to send T4s because, of course, tax season was just ending. Maybe they'll ask for these kind of things. Well, they know we're working, or a lot of people are working from home. So it's not like you can just get up and walk down the hallway and say, hey, boss, did you send me this? They know that, and they're taking advantage of it. What I would suggest that if you get a request and it looks legitimate from the boss asking for personal identifiable information, to transfer money, whatever the case may be, call them. Get them on the phone. Don't call a number that's in the email. You should already have a predetermined telephone number for the boss. Call them and say, hey, did you send me this? That's going to stop so many of these fake attacks. We had a company here in Moncton that they received the phishing email that looked so good. How good did it look, Scott? Clearly to me, someone else got hacked and they were able to see the language structure of the CEO's signature, who the CEO would normally email, and the request came in for a $10,000 wire transfer. It had the CEO's legitimate looking email signature. It was CC'd to the operations manager, and it was CC'd to the controller. Now, luckily, in the case for this company, the controller was like, why would I pay extra to do a wire transfer? And the boss is here. They actually did out a check, walked down the hall and said, hey, boss, here you go. You can just sign this and I'll mail this out. And the boss is like, I didn't send this. That's the level of sophistication the bad guys are doing. We talk about phishing. Phishing, they're just sending out as wide a net as possible. They're going to send out hundreds of thousands or millions of emails because it's a numbers game. You know, in business, especially in sales, you'll hear a lot of sales trainers talking about it's always a numbers game. The more people you meet, the more people are going to interact, the more people that will buy. Well, guess what? That principle carries over into the cybercrime world. It's a numbers game. The more they can send out, the more likelihood people are going to click or fall on it, and that's how they're making their money back. So please, if you get one of these emails from what looks like the boss, call and confirm it. They're not going to get mad at you. They're going to actually thank you. And if it's like, yeah, I did send that, great. Then you can confirm up the details and carry on, no harm, no foul. Some of them are actually just getting you to try to respond. Now, this example actually goes on and talks about International Wire, but we had another company here in the Southeast New Brunswick region. They got one of these emails, and it seemed to be coming from the boss, and it just said, hey, are you at your desk? And the person responded. Well, of course, actually, as you can tell, it wasn't actually the boss. And what's the harm that you responded? Well, now you've just validated your email address, so they can at least sell that on the dark web as a known validated email address. And now you can expect to be getting a whole bunch more scam and phishing emails and stuff being sent to you. But then they followed up and they started trying to build a conversation by email. Eventually they screwed up. They ended up saying something that kind of set off the warning alarms to the employee, but they engaged them in a conversation before they start making that request. That's another trend that we're starting to see. So they're willing to invest a little bit of time. You know, let's face it, with people sitting around and social distancing occurring, there is some more time for these guys to focus on that kind of stuff. And the old, hey, I'm in a meeting right now. Well, they could be in a Zoom meeting, they could be a GoToWebinar meeting, whatever the case is. Before we had our current situation in COVID-19, the bad guys were saying, hey, I'm going into a meeting. I need you to go pick up some gift cards. We're going to be giving them out for staff appreciation, whatever the case is. And they'd say, hey, don't call me. I'm going into this meeting. Just carry it out or send me an email and I'll get back to you. That kind of thing. Again, whether they're trying to engage in the conversation, we're seeing slight different variations of this. So make sure to be watching for those kind of incidents as well that might show up to try to engage you in that conversation. Confidential cure solutions. We touched on it a little bit earlier. This one was a bit unique because they had taken some time to make it look even more legitimate. It's hard to read the whole email. I'm going to make sure the slide deck, if you're interested, I'm going to make this available to the chamber and they can send it out to everyone if you wanted to read it more. But this one was done up with some actual factual information to kind of pull people in. But the whole goal, again, was trying to get you to click that link. And charities, which was touched on a little bit earlier, that local charities are getting hit hard with this COVID and people working from home. If you're going to be donating, make sure you know where the donations are going to. I mean, this email was sent out and, it said, click this link and you can help donate to helping to find a cure. And that's a great, noble cause. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying you might want to check to see what the organization actually is, that you're spending or you're donating your hard-earned money and resources to actual causes, okay? Not just because someone sent you an email and said, hey, we're fighting this cure, and they make it sound all nice and legit. I mean, look, this one even had pictures. Got to be truthful. Yeah, let me break the news to you. Bad guys, they'll lie. So please make sure that when you're donating that money, that your hard-earned resources in this time of need, I would suggest trying to do it to local charities, help the local community. But even if you want to do something bigger, make sure you take a look. It's a known charitable organization in order before you donate. Okay. So Scott, you've been telling us about all this stuff. What are we supposed to do? Yeah, you've given us a few tips, but how is there a sure-proof, foolproof way that we can spot this stuff? Well, let me break it down and see if I can't make it a little bit easier for you. I developed something I call the REST test. It's 4 easy ways for you to spot scams, whether it's coming to you from text messages or emails or robocalls or phone calls, whatever the case is. If you apply these 4 simple filters, if you will, this will cut down on the chances of you getting hit exponentially. During one of my sessions on media, they were like, well, how much, Scott? It's like, I don't know, 95%. It all depends how far you pay attention to these rules. Let's dig into them so you can see just how quick it is. R stands for requesting personal information. If they're looking for your credit card, your name, address, any of that information, that should set off the first little warning bell of going, hey, why do they need this information? Is this actually a legitimate request? Why would they send it to me by text message? Why is it showing up in email? Start asking some questions. They want your information. Don't just give it to them. Make them work for it and make sure that it's legitimate. And we talked about fact checking. So especially with the COVID-19 stuff, if they're using some sort of scam, listen, we saw a scam just recently saying you could download a report to know all the infected people in your neighborhood. There is no such report, okay? That doesn't happen. I mean, I don't know how much you've been watching on the media, but people are asking, they want to know the spread models, and the government's not releasing it. There is no report that's going to tell you who in your neighborhood is infected, okay? So right there, it's not. So if they're looking for personal information, that's your R. E is that emotion. They're trying to use that emotion to get you to take some action. That who's infected in your neighborhood, here's a home test kit so you can find out if you're okay. They're going to use something, and it'll be a takeaway. Respond now or else. Respond or now it's not going to be available. respond, or we're going to send law enforcement. Whatever the case is, they're going to use that emotion to try to get you to take quick action. They're going to try to make you bypass some normal protections or precautions that you would normally have in the office, right? If such a scam showed up, you might have stood up and walked down the hall and went talk to the boss, said, hey, did you actually ask for this? They know that's not happening, so they're going to try to get you to bypass those protections that you knew about. Now, this isn't as foolproof as always, but we are still seeing a lot of bad spelling or grammar, or I've seen some emails that the spelling is right, but it's not how we would normally speak. It's not how a corporation would normally speak. You can tell that English or French is not the first language, and they're trying to make it conform. Maybe they're using Google Translator or whatnot, but the S in REST test is check for that spelling or grammar. And T is think before you click. Hover, do not click, hover over a link. So when I showed all those different email examples and I had the links to websites, it may say it's going to the World Health Organization, but take your mouse, hover over it, and it will show you where it's actually going to, okay? So even if it says it's going to World Health Organization or Canada Public Health or CDC, when you hover over it, you may actually find out it's going to somewhere's .ru, which is Russia, or it might be going to Ukraine. It could be going somewhere else. So please, before you click any links, always hover over it. And even if you think it's a legit email, and maybe it is a legit, but if it's got a hyperlink, hover over it to see where it's going, to make sure that it's actually matching what it says of where you're going to be going to. So if we take these 4 easy steps, a lot of the stuff we just talked about, when it comes to social engineering, we can defeat it by using these filters on it. And it's my hope that you'll be able to take these 4 easy steps and help protect you and your family and your company from these bad guys, because they just don't have any morals, and they're coming at us fast and furious. So hopefully you found the information that was provided helpful, especially as we're doing our social distancing and sitting at home, and we've got more time to be sitting on our computers. And I'm ready, willing, and maybe before we go to question and answer, something broke last night that I saw, and we're all sitting here on Zoom. And the big conversation that came up last night was, is Zoom secure? Now, I'm going to be 100% honest, I have not dug into everything around Zoom, but what I can tell you is, if you're using Zoom, which a lot of us are, if you password protect your meetings, there's something called Zoom bombing that is happening. Those little codes in Zoom meetings with the little numbers and letters at the end, they're random and it's pretty easy to guess. So what's been happening is people with way too much time on their hand are guessing these codes, and they're just jumping onto random meetings, and they may start swearing or throwing out social or racial slurs, those kind of things. This is called Zoom bombing. It didn't exist really up to a month ago, but it is a thing now. As I said, my industry comes up with some pretty interesting terms for this stuff. So if you're holding those kind of meetings, put on a password. That will stop those. If you don't have a password, they can't get into your room. One of the other things that I have not been able to confirm yet is they're talking about hackers being able to access your camera. Well, listen, I've said all along, long before this, if you've got a webcam on your laptop, if you've got a webcam at home, cover it when you're not using it. Miss Teen USA several years ago, well, I'm not going to say the term because we're a mixed company, but some guy accessed her webcam, turned it on, and she was a young teenage girl living her normal life in her bedroom. And he spied on her for several times. And I thought she showed a lot of courage to come public. And we started telling people at that time, like, cover your cameras. So if they're not in use. So again, with the Zoom stuff, if you're not using your camera, why would you leave it unprotected? I'll tell you, at home, I've got a professional webcam and I can't really cover it. I just got that thing turned so it's looking at the wall. Some basic common sense things. Do I think someone's going to hack Zoom and get to your camera? Chances are probably not. Is it possible? Hey, listen, I've seen stranger things that have been possible, so it's always possible. It's always a risk. How do you mitigate the risk? Cover your camera, turn your camera. Same thing about microphones. You might want to disable the sound on it. And there was a few more concerns that were showing. Apparently Zoom at one time said they had encryption from end to end. It turns out they don't. What's the risk on that? Again, I haven't really dove into it all, but I'll ask the question of, if you're on your telephone and you're talking to someone, remember the old party lines, or someone being able to get onto a phone line? If you're just having a conversation, you have similar risks, whether it's by phone or whether it's online. Now I'm saying that, and maybe I dig into this over the next day or two, and I may change recommendations. So if so, I'll be posting it and letting you know. But at this point, from what I saw last night, these are some simple tips that you can use around Zoom, as a lot of us have moved to using an online platform to conduct business that can try to help keep you secure. So just to highlight that again, password protect your meetings and cover your cameras, so that if someone got in, they wouldn't be able to use that stuff against you. There. Okay. I think I covered that off for the moment, unless there ends up being some more specific questions.
All right. So thank you very much, Scott, for this very informative presentation and webinar. I find it's very sad to think that these criminals are taking advantage of these already stressful times and this current crisis to take advantage of people's fears. So like Scott mentioned, now's the time for the Q&A. Please click on the chat button if you'd like to pose a question. Il est maintenant temps pour les questions et réponses. Veuillez cliquer sur le bouton chat si vous souhaitez poser une question. So we'll just we'll give them a few minutes to see if there's any question. I do have one personally. You talked quickly on credit cards and the tap that everybody uses nowadays, and how people, if you were close enough, they have a sort of device and they can get all your information. Have you heard of that happening, like in New Brunswick?
So has it happened? It hasn't made a lot of headlines, so I can't say that for sure. Now, I can tell you that there has been scammers that have been caught and arrested that were putting on fake covers to debit machines that you would scan or tap. That has happened. It's happened here in the Greater Moncton area. I've seen demonstrated how you can have these RFID, they're called RFID readers, that can pull that information off of your card. There is a little some protections built into the technology. You can get wallets that will block that, so if you're concerned about it, that the cards can't be read. With financial institutions, it might be a good idea if you get email notifications, so that if certain amounts of a threshold, so maybe for you $500 could be like really bad. Well, you want to be notified as soon as $500 transaction occurs on your credit card or occurs through your bank account, so you can know about it. Because here's the thing with financial fraud, there's two different aspects to it. One is personal, and there is some protections around that through your bank. But for businesses in particular, if you don't find that fraud within 24, 48 hours, you're out of luck. I told the story earlier about the people that ran to the bank and they were out $250,000. Well, they didn't discover it for over a week. And by the time they went back to the bank, guess what? All that money had already been transferred. It's gone through the wires and it's over on the other side. And the bank said, hey, look, someone came in with your legitimate username and your legitimate password. Nothing for us to do. So you've got to be kind of watching these things. So specifically for business people, make sure your company has got some sort of alerting. Now, $500 might be too low. Maybe if you're a bigger company, maybe it's $10,000. Whatever the case is, you should try to get alerting on your accounts. And on the personal side, you need to be kind of watching it as well as much as possible. And if it's really a concern to you, get one of these RFID blockers. So you have the cards inside these sleeves when it's sitting in your wallet or in your purse. And you just, when you pull it out, then you can actually use it. Okay, thank you. We have a question from Erica. She's asking, what do you suggest as a virus computer protection and the prices and benefits? So I'll tell you this. We've played with a lot of different antivirus protections, and one of the issues I personally have with antivirus is traditionally antivirus protects you from known threats, meaning it has to know about the virus in order to protect against you. That's just the way the definitions have been. So let's say I wrote a virus and it got on your computer, and your computer doesn't know because it's a new virus. You're infected. Your computer will eventually send that information back to your antivirus company, who will then reverse engineer and come up with a fix, and they'll send that out to everybody else. Great for everybody else, not so great for you if you happen to be one of the first people. So you'll hear terms in my world, zero-day exploits. That means basically you were one of the first people to get hit. So for my business clients, we're running something a little bit higher. It's called advanced endpoint protection. I touched on it a bit earlier. Someone downloads that Word document and they click on it and it tries to call out to the servers of the world, and it shuts that stuff down because it's behavior-based. That shouldn't be happening. It could be overkill for home users. So we used to recommend Avast, but Avast turned out, there's a term that I use in a lot of my cyber seminars, that if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. Well, it turned out with Avast, that was the case. You got free antivirus. It actually was decent. I actually had my butler on it, but it was actually spying on where you were going. Now, it didn't give out your personal information, but they were selling trends to advertisers to generate revenue. So directly to the question, what do I recommend? There's two that I would look at. Sophos has got a fairly decent product, especially for home users, and ESET, E-S-E-T, has also got another decent product, especially for home computers. For corporate environments, I would say antivirus is not your friend anymore. You need to have better security. For all of our clients, we're running this advanced endpoint protection, and then we're running breach detection. So as we cybersecurity defenders keep building up the walls, the bad guys are figuring out how to get over. And the way I analogize that is, we're trying to build a castle, and we're standing on top of the ramparts, and we're trying to look to see where the bad guys are coming from. And all the bad guys have got to do is find a little crack to get in. So what this breach detection does is that another layer of protection. If they get inside the walls, this is like the barking dog. It's going to bark and say, hey, this is questionable. And it just gives that other look. So hopefully I addressed the question directly. I just always get a little hesitant because with personal computers, you maybe don't need that level of protection. And because let's face it, the stuff I recommend to my business clients, it's a little pricier than your normal home antivirus. But if you're looking for that antivirus, I'd look at Sophos and ESET.
Okay, thank you. So from Janice, she's asking, how would I find out about whether Zoom for healthcare is secure? It does show that the meeting is encrypted, and can she trust that? I also can make the person wait in the waiting room and lock the meeting when all participants have joined. So you did talk a bit about Zoom.
Yeah, which platform did she say that she was using? Is she using Zoom, or is she using something else? Or
it is for Zoom. How would she find out about whether Zoom for healthcare is secure? Because it shows that it's encrypted, but is that something that you can trust?
So depending on what that icon is, and I haven't seen Zoom for healthcare, so I really don't have an informed opinion on it. I will tell you from the report that Zoom had been reporting that they had end-to-end encryption, but this telecare, that there is ways to host Zoom on private servers, as I understand, not the public stuff. So you may be into a different category that has some extra encryption built onto it. I'm not informed enough to give you a really good advice around it. But if it says it's encrypted and you're not sure, reach out to the vendor and ask them directly and get it in writing. So at least you'll have some peace of mind around that. And if it's for healthcare, I'm not sure if that's through the province or where, but if it's something like through the province's Zoom setup, you might want to reach out to their technical support and ask those questions direct there too.
Okay. From Robert Bask, he's asking about the app Keeper. How secure are password keeping apps? So for example, that app Keeper.
So what I'm going to say, Robert, is there's like 3.6 million different apps out there, and I don't know them all. I'm pretty good, but I don't know them all, and I have not looked at Keeper personally. As long as it's encrypted, and if they're telling you, where are the passwords being kept and what kind of level of password to get in, those are the things you want to look at. I've used LastPass in the past. I've heard of Keeper. I just haven't played with it to know for sure. What you want to take a look for and see. So I know, like with LastPass, they say they're so secure. If you lose your password, they can't get you back in again. All that stuff's gone. Like the stuff is encrypted on their servers. So even if you said, hey, LastPass, I need in, they can't help you and they can't get you your passwords back because it's encrypted. Check with Keeper. They should have that same kind of level of security. The company should not be able to get in and see your stuff. If that's the case and it's encrypted and only you've got the master password, for goodness sakes, don't lose the password, but that should give you some peace of mind of knowing that you're the only one that can get in there.
Okay. So just to go back quickly on Erica's question about the antivirus apps or programs, she was asking if you could send her or even put it in the chat, the links for those few different programs that you talked about. We can either do it now or we could send it to her afterwards, whatever is easiest.
I don't have them right here in front of me. I know if you open up Google and type in ESET, which is ESET, so Echo Sierra, Echo Tango, that's going to bring up their site. And the other one is Sophos, which is SOPHOS. But yes, I can send the links to you and you can send them out after the fact.
Perfect. So I think that's about it. I'm afraid that's all the time we have. We're right on time, 11:30. I really want to thank you again, Scott, for sharing your knowledge with us today. And just for everybody else in here, if you have any other issues or topics you would like us to present in a webinar, please let us know at the Chamber and we will line up the appropriate resources to present. We do have a few in line for next week, so just stay tuned and we'll have them up on our website. So thank you.
Can I make one last comment?
Yeah.
You guys were generous enough. I've created a 5 steps to keep safe working from home. I've created a document on some of the stuff we talked about today of how to avoid the coronavirus scams that are occurring. And I saw that you guys were generous enough to put it up on your website under your COVID-19 resources. So if you want to get reports, there's free, there's no sign up. I created them, just try to help. I mean, we're all in this together. We got to get to the other side. So if you wanted to get those resources, you get them through the Chamber, or you can visit the becktek.ca website.
Perfect. All right, so I think that's it. Again, thank you everybody, and thank you, Scott, and have a nice Friday and a nice weekend.